You know, as a young American child, just as many others, I was often very fascinated with our history, as well as our historical battles and wars. There were always so many heroic and brave, patriotic tales, and I always found myself just so envious that I couldn't be a part of those. I mean, not really, because I would have died, but I wanted to live out all the bravery and heroics without the negatives like death or having my legs cut off. Thankfully for me, through the power of RimWorld, I can live out these fantasies without any worries. And that is why today, my friends, we are creating the Union Army in RimWorld. We are going to be surviving off the land and fighting off the Confederacy.
Look my clock, EP1 button, shoot some beat.
Oh, way down south in the land of traitors, rattlesnakes and alligators. Right away, come away, right away, come away. Where Cotton's king and men are chattels.
However, before we begin, we are going to be going over our soldier classes and their stats. As you can see, our army is 57 strong, including our general. The first soldier class that we have is the Union Rifleman. They all have the same stats and gear. Next up is our Union Sniper class that has a much higher shooting skill and a very similar set of armor except for their rifle. Last but not least is our artillerymen. They have much simpler uniforms and are only equipped with pistols, but of course their primary job is simply going to be firing mortars and cannons. Now with all that being said, we're finally ready to release them, let them cut down some trees and start getting our camps together. And I want to give a quick disclaimer as well, I am not going to be doing anything historically accurate here. We're just here to have some fun and some laughs and shit like that. So unfortunately, if you're here to see anything historically accurate, I'm sorry. I'm just playing dress up with a bunch of soldiers and making them kill each other, and we're going to be killing a lot of other crazy stuff by the end of this. But for now, we're beginning by cutting down plenty of trees so we can have plenty of wood to begin building campfires. We're going to need these campfires to begin cooking plenty of meals, because one of the biggest concerns when we have this many colonists isn't always just the threat of giant raids, it's starvation. But it's also giant raids, so we're also collecting plenty of resources to build cannons and walls and things like that. We began hunting all of the local wildlife simply because we had so many little grumbling tummies to fill. Our very first night here between the mountains basically just consisted of building campfires, beginning to cook meals, and also building some dirt pathing around the camp. That way it's easier to see our colonists and whatnot. This also makes it much easier to position them in the camp if we were to get raided. That way we're not trying to stand behind trees or in front of trees, things like that. You know, now that I think about it, it actually is a good idea to stand behind trees when you're shooting at someone. We might die, but you know, hopefully we won't, but we might. Moving on though, we ended up having the soldiers plant a massive rice field. Unfortunately, however, I forgot to add the tilled soil mod, and I was a bit too lazy to add it when I realized. So unfortunately, we're not going to have any rice anytime soon. We better get used to living off squirrels and berries. Not only are we eating wild animals and fruits here in the forest though, we're also roughing it by lying out on the icy, cold, horrible ground. Surely there's something better than this. If they keep lying out on the ground and eating without tables, they're going to start going batshit crazy. And then, an idea came to me. What if instead of having our good old American soldiers lie out on the cold, icy ground, we built them some shitty little wooden shack things to lay in at night? Ah, perfect, I thought. And look at them all out here, cooking meals together, relaxing by the campfires, truly having a good time. Nothing like camping out in the woods with your best bros. Now, with that being said, we're not going to be having a very good time if we don't start building some defenses. Those damn graybacks are going to walk all over us. Just as well, we can't have our men starving to death. If they're malnourished, they're going to be weak and sloppy fighters. So unfortunately, it was either we put these filthy muffalo out of their miserable little existence, or we die ourselves. We made the obvious choice. So there is a bit of an unspoken rule here that I should probably, well, speak about. After 3 days of sitting around, I'm going to force a raid if one does not come. And because of this little rule that I came up with, we're going to begin working on some cannonballs and some cannons to try and defend our base. Because just like in the words of the late and great George Washington, stay strapped or get clapped. Jesus Christ, I love that quote. Anyhow though, moving on, our area here is actually highly defendable in this clip that I took early on before we began building our base. As you can see, we are nestled right in the arse crack of a mountain. And for a time, not really much happened. We done a little bit of tree cutting, a little bit of mining and whatnot, and we cooked meals, but most importantly, we spent some quality time together. And this time together and these conversations would be important because they really brought us together. Brothers in arms, we all bonded together. But during all the bonding, we realized that our time was up. It had been the third day and we hadn't got any raid yet, so that means it's time for me to create one. And so I did. The Confederacy has arrived nearby. Now, I did individually create every single one of these Confederate soldiers, as you'll notice by their name. You may also notice, unlike our Union Army, there is a slight lack of diversity among their ranks of soldiers. Now, I may have done that because I wanted it to be more realistic, and also because it was easier to just copy and paste the same character. But who cares? We're about to absolutely shred them with our cannons and rifles. General Sawyer has never been more ready for a battle in his entire life. It's about time these damn Dixie boys learned to mind their Uncle Sam. We began loading up our cannons as all the enemies approached. And as they got closer, we fired upon them, killing several of them. But this was only the first small little wave. The rest of the army followed behind shortly after. But as they approached, they too would be met with massive hails of gunfire. They might as well have been throwing their men directly into a meat grinder at this point. General Sawyer and his soldiers stood firm though, like mighty oak trees in a hurricane. Except the hurricane was getting turned into sausage by our bullets. And so it was. We had defeated this first raid of the Confederacy. With the vast majority of their soldiers being killed during the battle, the only concern we really had is where are we going to put all these bodies? Now, I will admit a few of our soldiers were injured during the battle, but luckily it was nothing too severe, a few flesh wounds and things like that, but nothing like the blow that we had dealt to the enemy. Now, let's not forget what good old Daddy Rat told you earlier though. We're going to have some pretty insane battles. It's not going to be all this historical shit of the Confederacy and the Union battling and just that boring stuff, even though it is actually very fun. We're gonna have to ramp this up about 55 notches and do some crazy shit, which I am actually somewhat concerned with because just with the raid that we had, this has began causing some issues for our soldiers having mental breaks. And if enough of our soldiers are having mental breaks, we're not going to have any soldiers to fight. To kind of counteract this, I decided to build them some beautiful tables and chairs to eat their meals at, and hopefully that would maybe make them not go insane. A bit of a spoiler though, it wasn't working. Now for our next raid, I decided to do something a little bit unconventional. I thought to myself, what if we gave them a soldier class that carried giant Gatling guns and was huge and tough? And I also thought, hey, why don't we give them some dragons? Because why not? This is RimWorld. We can do anything we want. And just for shits and giggles, I gave their pitiful little general some kind of Roman shield or something. I don't know. You know we're going to kill him. Our soldiers, as well as General Sawyer, are much tougher than any old dragons. I hope. Their army made their way around the hill and we began firing on them. We thought everything was going swimmingly until the dragons began spewing molten rock at us. And they didn't stop there either as they began lighting the entire battlefield and all of our soldiers on fire. After getting a good look at our army during this time, I was getting a tiny bit concerned for their well-being. But nevertheless, through thick and thin, as the flesh was literally burning from their bodies, they stood tall against the enemy. Eventually, after killing the vast majority of their forces, we arose victorious. But this time, the victory did not come without its cost. Unfortunately though, the enemy did not give a shit as they were immediately coming to raid us once again. This time the raiding party was smaller, but the majority of the soldiers were heavy soldiers carrying Gatling guns. One of them was also dressed like some sort of death knight carrying a doomsday rocket launcher and went by the charming name of Cletus. Regardless of how silly the enemy's names were though, our soldiers were in no shape to fight. The majority of them were damn near on their deathbed from the previous raid. We needed help. We needed a hero. Dear God, What is this? From the transport pod bursted Abraham Lincoln himself, and with his mighty patriotic minigun, he began raining down hellfire on all of the Confederacy. Not only was he extremely handsome, but he was also extremely tough as well. After completely tanking a shot from the Doomsday rocket launcher, he continued his rampage. Even as the last remaining enemy soldier was attempting to flee the area, Abe tracked him down and stabbed him right in the old gullet. He then entered the camp and began rescuing some of our injured men. God bless you, Mr. President, and God bless America. Hey, how's it hanging? I just want to stop in here at the end of the video and thank you ever so much for watching. I also want to give a quick thank you to our very first patron to have their name featured at the end of a video, Brocky TV. You are the bomb. If you guys want to be like Brocky TV and support your favorite noble rodent, be sure to hit the link for my Patreon in the description and also in the channel bio. But I love you guys ever so much and I will see you next time. Goodbye.